All right, welcome to today's podcast episode. And as some of you may know, some of the faithful listeners, as well as those individuals who actually take the time to read, there's a couple things that I have been active in for quite some time. Number one, it serves as a little bit of like a preamble to this, but this podcast, is really an extension of the website, not the other way around. What does that mean? So what that means then is I value the written word more. And there's some reasons why. I think there's ways that I can write things. I can write robust, substantive articles. People don't go to, let's say, podcasting and look up things, even though like a lot of, let's say, Gen Z does go to YouTube, and a lot of millennials will go to Google, right? We'll go to Google and I'll ask a question. And a lot of times it doesn't lead me to a podcast so much as it might lead me to a website with, written words or whatever. Nonetheless, I like to write. I really enjoy writing, but a podcast format kind of come out because, there was just talking to way too many people and like, man, you have you have a way that you speak about you is, I guess, the way I'll say that. And there's this perspective that you can talk and articulate certain points that seem relevant, and I'd listen to your podcast, that kind of stuff. But one of the other things that I'm actively on is Reddit. I think Reddit reminds me of like early internet days, if I'm being honest. And a lot of older millennials will probably, maybe this will resonate with you a little bit, but I think Reddit reminds me of early internet. Early internet, at least in my experience anyway, it was kind of like, okay, a lot of the chat forums and different things, because it was kind of a novelty. Oh, I can talk to somebody in different places across the country or, quite frankly, across the world. And it was very interesting during that time period. Reddit reminds me of that. While we're not actually in a chat room per se, I mean, you can do Ask Me Anything, AMA, but even just the commenting back and forth, it's like the internet's large forum is kind of how it may sound, right? And so one of the things that I'm very active in is I'll, every now and then I'll try to keep up like this streak. And I'm, at the current time of recording, I'm probably at like, something like early 200 every day. And sometimes, some days I'm just too busy. I'll get on there and I'll click, upvote on one thing and then jump off. And then I won't have any opportunity to really like dive into some of the subreddits. But some days I do, like today, which is what kind of prompted me to come down here and record this podcast episode. And it's this interesting dynamic that I'm finding, and it's that people, and I'm having conversations with people outside of Reddit too, by the way. And it's just this concept and this thing that, people are in some form or fashion, they're not in the trades. I don't think it's it's really tough to compartmentalize like the entire workforce into white collar and blue collar. Although that is a dynamic that people tend to do that. I don't know that I would put somebody who is like, let's say, working in the service industry in white collar. I don't believe that they belong in the blue collar aspect either. So it's very tough to compartmentalize and just say, here's your dichotomy of choices, white collar and blue collar. But I'll say it this way. There's a whole host of people who are not in the trades and I'm a union iron worker. And it seems like almost every week there are people that get on Reddit and express, some kind of incredulity about the job market and the way things seem to be going, and how, they want to, they're looking for a change. And it's always this lead up, right? It's, I'm white collar. I've been doing XYZ job for, 7 years, 10 years, I've done this many different jobs in that same amount of time or whatever. And then it transfers over into, Um, I'm not fulfilled. I'm concerned about AI or some other thing that makes this person or these people think about the trades. And they're like, I'm, here's how old I am. I don't have any experience. What's it like going to be in the trades? I've heard you can make good money. And you read all of this. And if you read all of this with an open mind, what you come to discover is that they're not doing their homework. And you would think that, okay, well, I should be able to come to Reddit and I should be able to ask the question and then I should be able to get an answer. Except it's asked probably every single day. It's certainly asked every single week. When what they really could do is do some research about what it's really like to be in the trades, depending on the specific trade that you're asking. And I might add, it also depends on the where are you at in the country, your location. Because being an iron worker, I can only speak from being an iron worker, but being an iron worker in Mississippi is a lot different than being an iron worker somewhere where it's cold. Drastic difference in job site conditions, drastic difference in the way that you as an individual is viewed. The pay obviously is a thing. And I mentioned Mississippi. I happen to mention Mississippi because of the fact that it's down in the Gulf and the humidity out there is absolutely abysmal. But Mississippi also has the highest poverty rate in the entire country. Almost 1/5 of the constituents, the people that live in the Mississippi, are underneath the federal poverty level. So whatever trade you do, right? It's just gonna, all right. Well, how are you as a person viewed? How are workers viewed? They're usually seen in a less than glorious light. But this is all stuff that somebody could do some research on. And it's the easy way out to just jump on Reddit and ask the question. Or, go back and read a lot. And I mean, you could go to any kind of subreddit, skilled trades, iron worker, pipe fitter, union. I mean, there's a ton of subreddits that you can go back and glean conversational tones. Then you can even send emails to individuals that are commenting in those subreddits instead of, putting yourself out there on the Reddit, thread, on that Reddit subthread to ask a question that has been asked quite literally thousands of times. I read one today that had something to say, and it was something like, and I don't have it in front of me, so I'm gonna have to paraphrase it, but it was like, I'm white collar, I'm looking to make this transfer, blah, blah, blah. I don't have any experience, or actually it was reverse. So it was like, I'm blue collar, I'm looking to get out of this. I'm white collar, I'm looking to get into a white collar job, blah, blah, blah. I've got no years of experience. And it was very satirical. So it was very satire. It was laden, with sarcasm. And at the end, it was like, this is how and it was explicative. This is how you look when you ask this dumb question on the subreddit. And I thought, he's 100%, I'm assuming that's a guy. That person is 100% right. You haven't done any research at all to find out what it's like in your environment, your chosen profession, the trade that you're interested in, where are you at, your location in the country. You have no idea. So I thought that in the spirit of maybe just addressing this overarching, let's say, perspective about what it's like in the trade or whatever, I'd give you a day into my trade and what it was like for me about a week and a half ago, and just kind of put the cherry on top and say, everybody wants to do cowboy ironworker stuff, and look great doing it and make all this money until it's time to do the actual work. And instead of doing your research, and truth be told, there is a a level where you just can't do you got to stop researching and kind of dive on into it. But a lot of people would save themselves a lot of time if they actually did some research. So here's a podcast episode, and I'm going to give it to you straight about one particular day that was very trying. And guess what? I had some union iron workers and some union electricians on the job, and it was an 18-hour day. And it was an 18-hour day in the rain. Because this particular job here, once you get started, you have to finish. You cannot stop. You have to finish. And while this particular job is unique, there's a million of them that are not. But they have the same requirements. This job has to get done. And somebody's got to do it. And there is no, I'm punching out. There's a breakdown somewhere and I got to fix it. There's structural damage somewhere and I've got to do it. We got a busted pipe somewhere and somebody's got to fix it. There is no, I can punch out when I want. There is no safe in the cubicle. There is no out of the elements. No. I said something similar to this in a previous podcast episode where I was talking about the trades are not for everybody. And one of the comments on that same, Reddit thread that I was mentioning earlier was talking about how this romanticization of the trades culturally, number one, to me is a little bit weird. And I can address that point in a second. But number two, it's, back in the 2000s, early 2000s, it was learn to code. Hey, just go learn to code. Meaning, take a course or two or whatever kind of track you need to, so you can learn to write code online so that you could then write programs and you'll be able to, make all this money, blah, blah, blah. By the way, H-1B visas, the white collar world, if you will, is exploiting that whole concept there because they can try to, import cheap labor. But that whole dynamic, learn to code, it seems like that was a cultural push back then. It feels like it's a cultural push right now, pushing people to the trades. Why is this the case? Well, for starters, it's because the trades have been denigrated for so long that the need is actually there. And there's individuals, there's some higher profile individuals, like Mike Rowe is one for sure. But there's others that talk about how the trades are, let's say, devoid of people with a lot of talent. Yeah, no kidding. And that we need people in, various jobs. It could be welders, it could be fitters, whatever, HVAC technicians, all that kind of jazz. We need more electricians, especially for data centers, blah, blah, blah. All this stuff comes down the pike. And so, culturally, it's like, well, the previous romanticization of learn to code seems to be kind of cooling down, winding down, going away. Oh, look at this new shiny object over here that is go to the trades, go to the trades, go to the trades. And I can't help it. I'm on my soapbox. And we during that time where it was like learn to code, blah, 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 we're sitting here having these open conversations about, okay, well, you just, what you don't want to go to work with your hands. You want to go to college. It's just a foregone conclusion that you're going. Where are you going to go to college at? What are you going to major in? Blah, 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 blah. Well, now because we can't push people, the romance period, if you will, for coding is kind of over. Now the trades are coming along. And, there's this gigantic need to some degree. And we're looking at that as a shiny object. And the people on the college conveyor belt can't help themselves. And they have to somehow wrap their tentacles around this whole entire thing to the degree where they're like, trade school, trade school, trade school, trade school, trade school. It's like, allow me to tell you something right now. Trade school is like college for blue collar. That they won't tell you this. I mean, maybe there are some who will say this, but for the most part, that's what it is. It's like I'm licking my finger and trying to feel the way the wind is blowing so I can adjust, right? And try to make people try to draw people into trade school when it's a business model. And then you wonder why you can't get into an apprenticeship, but you can get into a trade school. That's easy because apprenticeships partner up with companies. And if the company demand isn't there, for one reason or the other, I'm wasting your time if I bring you into the apprenticeship and I can't put you to work. Trade schools don't care. Give me your money. So even with their eye on this shiny little thing over here because of the trades and all that kind of stuff, they're looking at it, they're going, aha, I know how I can wring even more money out of American citizens. Let's do trade school, or if you will, college for the blue collar worker. Meanwhile, you don't have any real world experience of what it's like. And let's say that you go spend your money at a trade school, God forbid, but you do. You spend $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 only to find out that that's not what you want to do. I mean, I guess it's better than spending 80 at a university or college and having all of that debt around your neck. But in the meantime, you never tried anything to see, maybe this isn't my cup of tea. Just because I heard that there was a lot of money, I got to bring a little bit more to the table. I got to bring a good attitude. I got to bring intentionality. I got to bring the desire and drive to be successful and to make a go of this, no matter what it's going to take, because it's going to take a lot more than what you thought. It takes a whole lot more than it does for the white collar individuals to go to work every day and do whatever they got to do. They have to mentally do some things, which is like, I'm not seeing any real progress on a day-to-day basis of what I'm doing. Whereas the blue collar guys typically can see something. So it's a mental shift, but there's a whole different way that you get up and go to work every day and begin to contemplate and think about how you got to get today's work done and what you got to do to get it done and what your mental state and everything else and your physical state. You don't have any of that because you don't know what it's like. And you're just thinking about the money, and the money can be there if and only if you have all this other stuff that you bring to the table to go after it. And then you deal with the days that you just can't believe that this has to be the way it gets done. It's like that old saying that I heard one time. Hey, some days I cannot believe I'm getting paid to do this. And in other days, I don't get paid enough to do this. So retroactively from the 18-hour day, I had a time-lapse camera set up off to the side to capture the events of the day because we started at noon, and by 3 o'clock, I was getting some good stuff on that time-lapse video, and by 7 or 8 o'clock that night, in comes the rain. That didn't stop till past midnight. All right. I had rain, I had rain. People had rain gear. Guess what? Completely soaking wet. By the end of that shift, I didn't get off till 6 a.m. So it was an 18-hour day. And by the end of that shift, I could step in my boots. Every step that I took, I could feel the water coming out of the soles of my boots. And they were on the boot dryer when I got home. Yes, there's a thing, by the way. It's called a boot dryer. You got clothes dryer because you wash and dry your clothes. It's a boot dryer because there's a saying, it be like that sometimes. There was a boot dryer that you have to take slide it inside your boots and turn it on, because guess what? My boots were soaked. And it's, kind of late spring right now as of this recording. And again, I said, hey, there's an awful lot of, in this particular job, in this particular instance, you have to get this done. You have to get this done. So it's late spring. So it's still a chill, especially at nighttime, because we worked all through the night into the next dawn. And you're sitting here and you're wet and you're kind of cold. And I have got to get this job done. And it's in moments like this, after someone has spent, $15,000, $20,000 in trade school, because the romanticization of the trades from a cultural perspective, but it's really give me your money. They didn't do any real serious research. That it's jobs like that, after you spend all this money, that then you decide, well, this isn't for me. When a conversation or two, or some more in-depth research would have been able to tell you that. It'd have been able to tell you that. It'd have been able to open your eyes and say, this isn't for me. This is not what I thought. And that's the truth of it. The trades are not for everybody. 100% not for everybody. Yeah, there's some money in it. I put away a lot of money this year because I worked a lot of overtime, unfortunately. It's just the nature of the beast. But the trades aren't for everybody. And it's not the ultimate bastion of, don't fall for the propaganda, if you will, from the colleges of the blue collar world trying to get your money when you may not even have a placement. But you need to know there are things that you should do your research on when you're actively talking about making a career shift or whatever. Can you come in? Sure. Will you be able to make it? Different question altogether. How is your mental game? How, what are you thinking about? How is your perseverance? What's your tolerance level like? What can you ultimately, let's say, deal with and muscle through to get done? Because they're going to be days upon days upon days where you're outside in the heat and the cold. Goes back to the location. Where are you at? Are you down in Mississippi? Down in the Gulf where it's, like ridiculously humid, and you got to walk like Yosemite Sam because you got chafing going on? Or are you somewhere where it's bitterly cold in the winter? Are you working somewhere where it's absolutely downright dirty? Because that stuff happens. Are you somewhere where you're going to get, some trades are more physical than others, but it's not even a possibility. It's definitely a plausibility that you're going to be working in some really dirty areas. These are all things, and many, many more, by the way, that you, the, let's say, aspiring or curious about the blue collar world, needs to seriously take into consideration. I would listen to podcasts. I would read, other people's answers to forums. I would interview or email and ask questions of individuals that are in the trades. I would do all of that and much, much more before I sunk a tremendous amount of money in some kind of romantical pursuit of the trades that culture is just pushing on you, which I just think it's, honestly, to some degree, it's a money grab. Now, I'm all about, bringing in new people. I love to see it. I love to, bring in apprentices and give them that shot. I can overcome an experience deficit. I can help them overcome it. I can help them, overcome, we got to work together and I got to develop you in time. But I, I can't overcome a person's inability to, let's say, weather the storm and stay in the trade. I can't do that. That's far more than I'm capable of being able to deal with, because I can't do it and nobody else can. Only you, the individual, the potential individual who is somehow interested in what the trades have to offer, and usually because of some kind of, we're talking about money, this thing about, okay, well, I can make a lot of money in the trades. Oh, I've heard I made a lot of money. Okay, that's great. How about everything else? You're looking at a very narrow sliver of the pie about what it means to be either an iron worker or a pipe fitter or an electrician, a crane operator, and all. A lot of times I end up leaving out auto mechanics because I'm usually talking about the building trades. Those of us, the elevator mechanics and a whole other slew of guys. But I've got some good friends that I've known since middle school that are auto mechanics, and they have some crazy stories about individuals that are like, "Oh yeah, I heard you can make some money." Yeah, you can make some money, but guess what? You got to work at it, and you have to deal with all of the accompanying things that come with that industry. And if you haven't done your own research into that specific trade, then you're not prepared for what you're going to face. And if you're not prepared for what you're going to face, the reality is you very well could fail. You could fail. It's very, very possible. Very possible. So I just want to, kind of end this podcast episode, and these are just kind of thoughts, really, more or less addressed to those individuals who are, let's say, naturally curious, or even like you've kind of become, let's say, culturally curious about what the trades are, because that seems to be the new hot button issue, or the new shiny object over in the corner. But what I would tell you is you need to actually have discussion. You need to do far more research than many of you are doing. And then you also need to, let's say, not fall for the college for the blue collar. If I'm being blunt, it's a money grab. It's a money grab in a lot of ways. You need to be painfully aware that the trades are not for everybody. Whatever your, prospective trade is, you need to be aware that the trades are not for everybody. And that in the end, it's not just, it's statistically possible that you're not going to make it. And if that's going to be the case, you might want to find that out by doing a significant amount of research, having a fair amount of dialogue with people in those various industries or trades, and then coming to terms with, okay, I may not make this, because this is not like, hey, come into the trades, the doors are wide open, and we're going to take just any and everybody. Not happening. Not happening. If you don't have what it takes to make it, then you have no idea the shark-infested waters that you're getting ready to enter into. You need a whole different mental game when it comes to getting into the trades. Whole different mental game. I just want to, kind of spread that out to let you know that that's the real possibility. I'm sorry. That's the real probability in all things considered. So for those of you who are interested, you do your research. Talk to other people. There is money to be made. 100%. There's also some serious serious problems that can arise that'll make you quit very early on. And maybe I'm saving you, a lot of money. Hopefully, hopefully I can, you're curious and you stumbled across this podcast or the website or whatever. And yeah, I was able to talk you out of going to blue collar college, which is trade school. And you were able to find out, via some kind of exploration that, okay, well, these trades aren't for me. This is, it sounds glamorous, right? And it certainly does in a lot of ways, but it's like, maybe, just maybe, I need to try and dip my finger or toe in the pool to see if the water is going to boil me alive or not. So, if you're on Reddit, you can, and you're listening to this, then you can go to my profile and it'll give you a link to the website. If you are actually listening to this, through your conventional podcast medium, whether it's iTunes or Spotify or even YouTube, for that matter, down in the description show notes, there is a link to the contact page. The contact page is where you go if you would like to have an open and honest discussion about any of the aforementioned topics or other ones that I have not talked about. And this also, there's plenty of written material that you can sit here and learn from or read when it comes to the pros and cons of the trades or, benefits of being a union contractor and the whole gamut. There's a whole lot of articles and things that maybe you would like to have a conversation with. The contact page on the website, again, in the show notes, is how you get in touch and begin a dialogue with me. I like to talk to people. I like to get your story, the situations and the things that are squared away. So if that sounds like something up your alley, you're more than welcome to go to that contact page, fill the form out, shoot me an email. Lastly, before I jump off here, any apprentices, construction or industry professionals who are interested, it also includes business owners as well, but any of the previously mentioned individuals, if you would like to have a conversation about the state of the industry or state of your company, or how you want some direction or some help in getting you in touch with individuals that could possibly help your company, or quite frankly, maybe you would like to let's have a conversation about how we can look at your company and help develop those people, et cetera, et cetera. Again, the contact page is where you want to go. I'd love to have a conversation with you. Let's talk about what the industry looks like in the next 5-10 years, what your, contractor life may look like, what your apprentice life will look like in 10 years, et cetera, et cetera. So, all right. Well, with that wraps up this podcast. I really appreciate the time that you took out of your day to listen to me ramble a little bit about, the white collar, let's say, interest in the romanticization of the trades. And as always, stay safe out there.